From a prophet's death to the feeding of 5,000, see Jesus walk on water and Peter sink in fear. Discover Matthew 14.
Analytical, curious. While the Gospel of Matthew is often read as a collection of moral parables, the 14th chapter follows a specific documentary-style progression. It presents a sequence of events that methodically tests the boundaries of authority in the ancient world. The chapter begins by establishing the baseline of earthly power. We meet King Herod, a ruler who executes John the Baptist not out of legal necessity, but to avoid losing face before his guests after a reckless, petty oath. In contrast to Herod's court, Jesus responds to the execution by retreating into this desolate wilderness, an environment defined by its harshness and isolation. This setup creates the central tension of the narrative, how the text will escalate physical proofs to redefine what true power looks like. For those living in this era, survival meant navigating two unforgiving forces, the violence of political tyrants and the immovable constraints of nature. This chapter introduces an authority that overrides both. The first test occurs in the desert. A massive crowd follows Jesus to this remote location, creating an immediate logistical crisis as evening falls, with no food in sight. The disciples propose a solution based on scarcity. They urge Jesus to send the thousands away so they can use their own limited resources to buy food in distant villages. This scale model visualizes the deficit. They attempt to offset 5,000 requirement units with 5 loaves and 2 fish, but Jesus bypasses the conservation of mass. As he breaks the bread, the matter multiplies, completely filling the requirement and leaving a 12-basket surplus. This generation of new material happens in real time. It is not an agricultural process, but an immediate expansion of physical matter. This event provides the first stage of proof. Jesus is not subject to earthly economics or the limits of supply. He exercises direct sovereignty over physical matter. The narrative then pushes the disciples into a more extreme environment. They are isolated on the sea during the darkest watch of the night, struggling against a violent contrary wind. A vessel like this, modeled on a 2,000-year-old wooden hull, highlights their vulnerability. In a storm, the disciples are entirely at the mercy of the elements. Jesus approaches them by walking across the surface of the sea. It is a direct suspension of gravity and fluid dynamics. Peter attempts to join him. He actually succeeds in walking on the water, but doing so requires him to maintain a singular focus against every natural instinct. The sensory distraction of the wind and churning water eventually breaks Peter's concentration. The moment he doubts, natural laws resume their hold, and he begins to sink. Jesus catches him, and as they board the boat, the weather system stops instantly. This represents a significant escalation. Creating food is a mastery of matter. Walking on the sea and silencing a storm is a mastery of the fundamental physical forces of the environment. The journey ends in Gennesaret, where the chapter reaches its geographical and thematic peak. Here, the methodology changes again. There is no spoken command from Jesus and no deliberate effort to perform a miracle. We see the result of a single point of contact. As the sick touch the hem of his garment, the text describes them being made perfectly whole, as if a corrupted biological network were snapping back into its intended physiological order. This demonstrates a radiating authority over disease, showing that his power over biology is effortless and final. Recall Herod's initial assumption. He believed Jesus was simply a resurrected human prophet with a few impressive tricks. But after witnessing the suspension of gravity and the multiplication of matter, the disciples reach a different conclusion. Of a truth, thou art the Son of God. When read as a sequence of escalating evidence, Matthew 14 functions as a completed argument regarding identity. It suggests that the world is not ultimately ruled by the whims of politicians or the chaos of natural law, but by a sovereign king whose authority over the universe is complete.